Vedic civilization, another name for the Indus Valley civilization. Rig Veda, Yajur Veda, Samaveda, Atharva Veda, Ayurveda, Mahabharata, Ramayana, and Puranas are among the many texts and scriptures revered by Hindus, Indus, or Indians. Stories from the Puranas are based on the Rig, Yajur, Sama, and Atharva Vedas. Ayurveda is said to be mainly based on the Atharva Veda. Mahabharata and Ramayana have references to Puranic stories and they are interrelated as well as interconnected. It is generally believed that all these texts were created around 1500 to 500 BC. This period was called the Vedic civilization and there was no dispute till the year 1920. However, the discovery of a new civilization in 1920 at Harappa and Mohenjo-daro, called the Indus Valley Civilization, questioned the origin of Vedic civilization. The Vedas and other texts were passed down generation after generation through an oral tradition known as Vadanti. This system of transfer, widely called as Guru-Shishya tradition, teacher-student tradition, was in existence between 1500 to 500 BC. The discovery of the Indus Valley civilization threw light on many things and generated discussions on the period. The period of the Indus Valley civilization was fixed at 3300 to 1700 BC. This confirms that the Vedas were created during 1500 to 500 BC, which is considered a separate civilization, different from Indus Valley civilization. The theory concludes that a civilization germinated and grew and blossomed during this period of approximately 1000 years. Thus, it ignores the period before 1500 BC. Scrutiny of Vedic texts led some scholars to date their origin as early as 7000 BC. From the Mehrgarh settlement, a Neolithic era in South Asia. Even though the Vedas were originally believed to have been the origin of Vedic civilization, 1500 to 500 BC. Texts refer to the Indus River, which is part of the Indus Valley civilization, 3300 to 1700 BC. Further examination by scholars took them back to the Saraswati River, mentioned in certain parts of the text. The Saraswati River is alleged to have dried up before the Indus River and could have been the cause for settlers to move to the Indus Valley. Thus, the origin of Vedic civilization goes back even before the dates of the Indus Valley civilization. And thus, the Vedas must have predated Vedic civilization. Some scholars also feel that the Rig Veda retains many common Indo-Iranian elements, both in language and in content. Soma Mandala, part of Rig Veda, is said to be even more ancient, containing many elements inherited from pre-Vedic common Indo-Iranian society. Rig Vedic society was characterized by a nomadic lifestyle with some agriculture. Finally, all this dates the Vedic text to the Mehrgarh culture, 7000 to 3300 BC, in the Neolithic era, proving that the Vedas were not created during 1500 to 500 BC. If we assume that the Vedic texts were created between 1500 and 500 BC, it means that the concept of God came into existence during this period only. Religion and gods were created during or after the 9th century only. As per texts, gods come into the world to set right prevailing anarchic situations by creating order and justice. This presumes that people living before 1500 BC were not righteous and were barbaric. These presumptions are not correct. On the contrary, the Indus Valley civilization, which was in existence before this period, was an intelligent and sophisticated society. It is also believed that the Vedas were not created all at once, but evolved over a period and were passed on to the next generation orally. As they transferred the knowledge, they made alterations and additions. And what we see today is the consistent efforts of many generations over a long period. Thus, it is correct to say that the hard work of the people living between 7000 BC and 1000 BC converted a body of knowledge into meaningful texts during 1500 to 500 BC. A knowledge or educational revolution must have taken place during the period of the Vedic civilization to consolidate or understand the knowledge of their predecessors. Susceptibility to natural disasters may be one of the reasons for them to activate the above revolution, which came to be known as separate civilization. It cannot be called a civilization, but rather a Vedic period. Since during this time, the earlier body of work was consolidated, sorted, divided, and arranged meaningfully in the 5 Vedic texts as we know them today. The Mahabharata and Ramayana were included among them. Takshashila, alias Taxila, is said to be an important learning center of ancient India dating around 600 BC, which is presently in Pakistan. These areas were ruled by Indo-Greek kings around 500 BC. Sanskrit was widely used, and Greek was used as a second language in the region. Greek influences were in existence until 90 BC. Kautilya, alias Chanakya, the advisor of Chandragupta Maurya, was said to be a teacher at Takshashila around 300 BC. Arthashastra was written by Kautilya in Takshashila. Charaka, the Ayurvedic healer, was also said to have studied at Takshashila. Nalanda University was in existence around 500 BC. All this points to a summit of knowledge taking place during the period which probably triggered the compilation of Vedas. Charaka may not be the name of the Ayurvedic healer. Char means 4, and Charaka may refer to the 4 Vedic texts out of which Ayurveda could have been compiled, rather than the general belief that Ayurveda is from the Atharva Veda only. Thus, elements in the 4 Vedic texts related to ancient medicine. Takshashila, Taxila, must have come out of Takshak, which means carpenter, who was an architect or artisan making articles out of wood. Takshashila, Taxila must have been adopted to mean literary architecture. Sanskrit is considered a base or mother language from which other Indian languages were born. How did the Sanskrit language come into existence? Sanskrit must have been created to record Vedic texts during the Vedic period. It must be a combination of existing languages of the time, namely Tamil, Greek, Latin, Egyptian, Roman, Chinese, and other Indo-European or Indo-Iranian languages. Alphabets of the Sanskrit script also carry the influence of these existing language scripts. Later, new languages and scripts were born out of Sanskrit. Circumstances led me to strongly believe that the Vedic scripts were written in the Sanskrit language from the literary work originally in the Tamil language. Tamil literary works should be researched thoroughly to confirm this. Vedic stories would have also been translated or written in Greek, Latin, Egyptian, Roman, Chinese, and other existing languages of that time. It explains the similarities of mythical stories in most of those languages. The displacement of Indus Valley civilization settlers due to natural calamity would have greatly affected the exchange of knowledge and research, and the development in various fields of medicine, mathematics, geography, astronomy, architecture, metallurgy, etc. A temporary gap may have been created in the research cycle along the Indus Valley civilization period into the Vedic period. Attempts would have been made to fill these gaps during the Vedic period. Efforts would have been made to revive the knowledge gained over the past millennia by all the interested groups of Indus Valley civilization people. The results would have led to the establishment of learning centers like Takshashila and Nalanda. History tells us that students and teachers from many countries came to these centers to quench their thirst for knowledge. These institutions must have been in existence for a long time. to be well known by scholars from various countries. When people of diverse cultures and languages interact and live together with the aim of learning and exchanging knowledge, the results are phenomenal. It creates new kinds of culture, language, and society. This is called evolution. The language used at that time was Sanskrit, which belongs to the Indo-European family. It was used by the educated elite. Tamil, the oldest Dravidian language, was also in existence around 500 BC. Tulkapiyam, Tamil grammar, is said to have been composed around the same period. Interaction between these two languages cannot be ruled out since there are instances where both languages have borrowed features from each other. Tamil and Sanskrit linguists thought it an anomaly and tried to weed out the mixture. Both languages would have worked together for a common benefit. Attempts would have been made to put the knowledge passed down orally over centuries into written form. The Puranic stories based on Vedic texts borrow words from Tamil, Greek, Latin, etc. Even though it is written in Sanskrit, there seems to be no quarrel in the usage of other language words except the spirit of conveying the message. Ancient Egyptian and Mesopotamian civilizations were contemporaries of the Indus Valley civilization. Egypt is said to have 5,000 years of written history. They knew how to use papyrus, grown abundantly in the region, for writing. Indus Valley civilization is said to have trade links with both Egypt and Mesopotamia. So, it is surprising that Indus Valley civilization, even at its peak, was not aware of writing. There seems to be a lot of nexuses between these three civilizations. Yet, there exist large gaps regarding the writing material. Were there any written materials equaling Egypt in the Indus Valley civilization? Or were they destroyed during the natural calamity which extinguished the civilization? There was no mention of the papyrus being used by the Indus Valley civilization. But Vedic texts were written on palm leaves. Did Indus Valley civilization also use the palm leaf as writing material? Papyrus is said to be stable in dry climatic conditions as prevailing in Egypt, but would have been decomposed in the humid conditions of tropical India. As this problem of preservation obviated the practice of passing down Vedas orally, another contemporary, the Chinese civilization, had written history for around 5,000 years. There is also a strong nexus between the gods of the Indus Valley civilization, Vedic period, Egyptian civilization, and the Greek period. Which of the gods was created first, or were all created at the same time?